welcome to Soul Symbols. My name is Shelley. I'm a writer, an astrologer, and a card reader, and I'd like to welcome you to my channel. Happy Tuesday. It is How to Tarot Tuesday, and what that is every Tuesday I go ahead and post a video on my channel, and what I do is I display one card from the 78 card tarot. The beginning of the video, we spend about 15-20 minutes talking about the symbolism of the card. And then after we talk about the symbols, we go ahead and you, the viewer, will get to choose from one of 3 tarot decks. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and we'll do a spread using your tarot deck to describe how the card manifests in your life. Today is a special day because we are doing a very cool card. Today we are talking about the Nine of Wands. Now, if you ever want to skip straight to your reading, the timestamps are always in the description box below, as are the name and the authors of all of the decks that I use. So we'll go ahead and get started. The Nine of Wands is actually a card that I've really been looking forward to. As we've been talking about the Wands, I did not realize how much I really enjoyed the suit. The Wands are, it's action and it's spiritualism. And it's amazing how, I read tarot all the time, and there's lots of cards, in the majors and in the minors that I feel an affinity for. But there's something about the way that the wands represent, expression in the physical realm, but also expression in a spiritual sense. And with that, I just really feel like it's a really, even though each of the cards have kind of a really dynamic meaning, they really do come to represent a lot when you see it in a spread. And to be honest, if any card could represent this year, I think the Nine of Wands would be it if we had to pick a clarifier for 2020. And I'm actually kind of laughing because today I posted 2 videos. The other video is in honor of National Superhero Day, and if you feel free to check it out. It's what's your superpower, right? And I'm kind of laughing because I'm wearing my superhero T-shirt and I'm all pumped up, but I'm giggling because I knew I was also doing the Nine of Wands, which is kind of, we'll talk about it in a minute, but yesterday I pulled a muscle in my knee, and then before I got up this morning I pulled a muscle in the middle of my back. So I'm feeling kind of like the Nine of Wands today. I'm just kind of pushing through. So superhero I am not. But you know what? We're gonna invoke our Nine of Wands on Superhero Day, and we're gonna get this done, right? So if you do hear me kind of groan and grumble, it has nothing to do with you. It's completely my own fault. Old age. Don't let it happen to you. But without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. But the Nine of Wands, when you look at the card, you see a man who looks like kind of, again, he almost like the Seven of Wands. He looks kind of like a page. He's a little bit older, not a child, but not a man. And he's got, his sleeves are rolled up, as if, he has rolled up his sleeves to take care of business. And then around his head, he has a bandage, right? He's not wearing armor, but he's wearing clothes that look like it's, they're not exactly clean. It looks like he's been through some stuff. And then behind him, he has 9 wands. Now, there's one wand that's the tallest, and then there's another wand that he's holding on to that he seems to be leaning on, right? And he seems to be looking behind him with an apprehension, like a look of caution. And in the background, you see quite a bit of greenery, right? So when it comes to the Nine of Wands, and again, if we had to pick a card to represent the year 2020, the card is really about, it is about weathering the storm. You see with the bandage on his head and on all the rods behind him, he really looks like he's conquered a lot, right? He's definitely been through the war and lived to tell about it. And the other thing that you get from this card is just a real strong sense of perseverance, right? He pushed through all obstacles, and he won all of those rods, right? He won them. And when you look at his feet, you really kind of look, it really does look like he's on some kind of terrace. It doesn't really look like ground. So, it kind of, and we've talked before in the, with the magician and the fool, the tarot really goes from a natural background to anytime you see what looks like concrete in tarot, it really means that he's kind of gone from, it's kind of a symbolism of going from the wild to going to civilization, right? But you can kind of see that even though this person has been come from the great frontier and come back to civilization, it's almost a little bit of it's almost like a little bit of a trauma, right? The look on his face. I mean, this definitely, when we get into the meanings, we're gonna talk about some of the things that it can mean. But basically, it really means, it's definitely defending yourself. The first and foremost meaning is that you are defending yourself. He's holding on to that rod as if he still has to use it, right? And the other thing is that this person is not fully healed from his past hurts, right? He's well enough to stand up, but it is almost like he's leaning on that rod to hold himself up, right? He's leaning on the very last reserves of his energy. Now, a lot of times it definitely means continuing despite fatigue, right? It means that you push through regardless of the circumstances. It's so a lot of times it really does mean that you've been through the war, but it's taken its toll on you, right? It's kind of like, it isn't like you're fresh faced and have all the energy in the world. You really are, you don't have much left to give, but you are holding strong in the fact that you're going to see something through to the very end. So a lot of times that is the meaning. It's holding fast. It's saying, okay, I shall not give in, right? A lot of times it means drawing on hidden reserves. So if you see this card, when you really are feeling worn out, you feel like you can't go any further. It is kind of like that 11th hour, last mile kind of feeling. Like, okay, I'm almost there. If I could just muster enough energy to get over the finish line, right? So a lot of times if you see the Nine of Wands, it can pertain to school. Maybe you're studying for that last test, or maybe you're finishing up that last class to get you through, to get you graduated. Maybe you are, you're really working hard on a project and it's almost done. You just have to put that last little bit of energy into it. Maybe you really do feel like you're at your wit's end with something, maybe you feel like you've been fighting and fighting and fighting. The other thing is I do see this card when you feel like, okay, like you're done fighting, right? You've had enough, right? Like it can also be when someone's getting on your very last nerve, right? Like I only have a little less, I have this much patience, left to go, and you're kind of treading on it, right? Now, the other thing is that it can definitely mean demonstrating physical strength. When I see this card, I definitely think of someone who can hold their own. There's this cartoon. I hope I'm allowed to show it, but it shows this pelican trying to eat a frog, and the frog is holding the throat of the pelican, like okay, I don't die, I don't give in, right? I don't give in, and that's definitely a Nine of Wands kind of energy. The second deck I kind of went with was the Slow Tarot. And I love this depiction because it really does. It depicts what looks like, what looks like a woman who really has been through tough times, and she's looking behind her and she's, again, been through the war and she's not going anywhere, right? She's like, look, I have come this far. That's the other thing, is that I have come this far and I'm not taking any more crap. I'm not going anywhere, right? We're going to see this through to the bloody end, is kind of that feeling. Now, this can manifest in parenting sometimes, if you're going through someone who's being a difficult teenager, or maybe you have a family member who's really put you through hell, lack of a better word. The Nine of Wands is really not giving up. It's saying, okay, I'm going to stick this out and do the right thing. Now, the other thing that I kind of see, and it kind of takes a more modern context, is that I do see it being a card of making do with the reserves that you have. And this is actually kind of a funny story. I went to the grocery store, as we all have been doing, and you try not to overstock, but you try to stock enough to get the food that you need for, the next 7 days and the next 14 days. And I thought I was stacking up on crackers, like wheat crackers to go with like cheese. And, what happened was I ended up getting a brand that is apparently an English brand of crackers that it turned out to be not like wheat crackers that you eat with cheese. It turned out to be like graham crackers. And I was like, oh my gosh. Now I had a surplus of graham crackers, but how do you eat that with cheese? I mean, it's like cheddar grams, right? It's not the same. So I know we've been joking about a lot of it, but it's really almost not funny the way that you kind of look at the pantry and you kind of go, okay, I've got this much peanut butter. I've got, what can I throw together to actually make a meal? And you know what? Honestly, it kind of teaches you new things. I mean, that's probably how pizza was created way back in the day, right? Okay, I have bread, I have tomato. Let's do this. But it is kind of like that perseverance. It's like saying, okay, I'm gonna make do with what I got, and that can be money, that could be food. You're basically you don't say die. Like you're a survivor, right? You're a survivor. Now, in that vein, it definitely means, it means persisting despite setbacks. So it definitely means that, if something is coming at you, this is the person that will never concede, right? And this is what I love about the third deck. And it's interesting with this card, in some of the other How to Tarots, there are different depictions of the card, but it's amazing how the Nine of Wands, I mean, there's probably a few decks that kind of re-envision it, but really the first Rider-Waite Smith depiction of this card is just so accurate that even the more modern decks really don't change it up because it's that good. You know what I mean? It's like the imagery, the illustration just sums it up, right? And so the third deck I went with is the Vice Versa Tarot. And the Vice Versa Tarot is great. It actually doesn't have a formal card back. The reverse is actually the card meant to be read as the card in reverse, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I love the way that the guy definitely looks like he has been. And this guy is actually one of my favorite Nine of Wands, because this guy looks like he has been through the war. He is no BS, right? He is just like, he's almost got that, not even... He's got that, not even Rambo. It's kind of like an Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of look. Like, yeah, you don't want a piece of this. You just don't. But the other thing is that you see, at his feet, he has a kind of a battered helmet, right? And it looks like his helmet. And he's got, he's got stains and he's got scratches, and it looks like he's got one eye, like you really want to mess with the dude with one eye, right? And he definitely is holding that staff like he's using it as a weapon. So a lot of times it means perseverance in a very primal sense. It's a soldier, right? Just about all of these depictions are, even in the ones where someone's not wearing armor, you feel like you're a soldier. You feel like you've come through the dark, the darkness, right? You've lived through the war. Now, the other thing is that, you hear of there's a Japanese saying that says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And that's really what I think of when I think of the Nine of Swords. It means, you can get knocked down a lot and you'll just pop back up, and it's like, okay, even though you're bleeding, even though, it's like, I can do this all day, right? Even though you're really, you're ready to fall down, and you're like, no. And you are kind of, and with the depiction of some of the non-armored, versions, it really is a little bit like being the underdog, but you have that spirit. And again, the wands are spirit, right? Wands are spirit. but it's keeping your resolve, and you're just not going to give up. Even if you fail a million times, you're not going to give up. And there is a beauty in that, right? There's a beauty. There's this spark of, and they even say it with CEOs, the person who's afraid to fail is almost guaranteed to fail, because you have to fail to be successful, right? You have to fail and learn what you did wrong, and then try it again and try it differently. And that takes a lot of trial and error. What did they say? How many times did Edison? I think 187 times, maybe more than that. He failed at making the light bulb a lot. A lot of people who are the most successful CEOs in the world have failed more times than you would imagine. And you could even Google it. Think of someone that you think is, the just the most successful person in the world, and just look at how many failures that person has had. And that is really definitely kind of a Nine of Wands energy. Now the other energy that you get from it is and a lot of times it can be, and this isn't even in the negative sense, with the way that the person's looking behind them, right? And in every card they're looking behind them, right? Right? They're kind of looking over their shoulder, right? This can definitely be a card of okay, it can be a card of trauma. And in that sense, it can be a card of paranoia. You've been through a lot, right? You've had, you've been taken advantage of. You've had things done, you've seen things, or you've experienced things that were really hard, that were not the normal, that were harsh, right? So in that sense, I definitely take this card as being, I always call it the School of Hard Knocks, getting your PhD at the School of Hard Knocks. So when I see this card, I definitely see a street smart person, right? And again, especially in the decks that don't have armor, because this person has learned the hard way, right? They've learned through really gritty experience, and that's not pleasant, right? So it makes you hesitant. It also makes you question things, and it makes you guarded. It makes you wary. So this would be the person that has their guard up, So also in a romantic sense, this can be someone who's really been screwed over in the past, and they're not going to be easy to win over. But again, just like we said, with it being wands, it's usually someone who has a really good heart. It's just they've been through some stuff, and you have to be gentle with them. You almost have to show them that the world isn't going to do that to them again. Now, the other side of it is that definitely in that same vein, it can mean the kind of trauma from actually having been to war. You do see this card with soldiers who have PTSD, or post-traumatic stress syndrome. You have this from people who have really been abused. Those people who have kind of unusual responses to things, like maybe you are showing them kindness and they just feel, and they respond with anxiety, or they might even have depression. So those are very sensitive and real kind of conditions that you want to be careful, and you want to be kind and patient with. But again, it's like, looking behind you, and making sure. Now, also in that same vein, it can be the person who protects others. And that's what I like about the vice versa tarot, is because he really does look like he's guarding something or someone, right? And behind those rods, he, I do think you do also see this if it comes up as a person. It can be a little bit of a mama bear or papa bear kind of thing. It can be an older sibling, or someone who's looking out for someone else. So definitely if you see this around a court card, or if you see this, around a page, or basically it can represent someone who is guarding someone else, but they've kind of taken the brunt of life in order to shelter the other person. Now, and a lot of times it can be, territorial. That's the other thing, is that if you feel like maybe you this is also a sign of maybe you feel like you've done the work, and someone is coming in and trying to steal your thunder. And again, we've seen a little bit of that throughout the Wands, right? The Five of Wands is kind of about competition, and the Seven of Wands is about competition. But this is definitely about almost, you really putting your foot down. This, unlike the Seven, where, you might get overpowered, this is the person that definitely is like, they would again fight to the very end. And the other thing is that it is a lot of inner strength, but it can also be a little bit of, I do think of this, and in all three of these cards, it's definitely, I kind of see it as the come at me bro card. Sometimes you can be like, okay, it can be that sense of, you thinking, okay, I'm going to go up against someone, and what is their, if you're asking the question, what's their response going to be? And it's going to be like, okay, you want a piece of this. It's kind of the response when you see the Nine of Wands. It's like, okay, you think you're going to take this? Let's see how far you get, because there are 9 other wands there. There are 9 other times. There's been 9 other people who've tried to take this hill, and look what happened to them. It's kind of the feeling that you get, right? Now, on the same vein is that sometimes, if you're seeing it in a situational sense, it can mean that you do have to stand up for yourself. As advice, it would be telling you that you do. As advice, it would probably be cautioning you that it is going to be a long fight. It's not going to be an easy victory, but it does mean that you have, the other thing that it tells me is that you have the strength to persevere, that it's not going to be easy, but you'll make it. But you're gonna have a lot of times that you feel like giving up, but you don't, right? So that is usually, the other thing is that it can also be the signs of a fighter in more of a social and political sense. So it can be someone who's fighting for the rights of others, for those, again, and it can be like kind of civil rights in the sense that it can be, the causes that are really hard won, that will take time and will take, perseverance to get through. But it is and if you see this next to a major card like the Wheel of Fortune, or more of the long-term ones. Now, when you look at the card in reverse, it definitely talks about not having enough defense, right? It's almost like, the first thing that I think of is, okay, this person is getting hit almost like an Achilles heel. This person is strong, but they're getting punched in their weak spot, right? And that weak spot can make their defense crumble, right? In other senses, it can be, inadequate defenses, and not to get too sensitive with it, because I know it's kind of a sensitive thing to talk about, but it can be someone who's susceptible. So in a health sense, that can be someone who's immunocompromised. So if you're asking about someone, it could be somebody who's a little bit more able to get sick, or to, be affected by some kind of what feels like an attack. The other thing is that it can be carelessness. It can be, someone who is very foolishly, letting themselves be open to something that might come in and conquer them. The other thing is that it can be a fear, like if you see this next to the Nine of Swords, it might be a fear that you think that you're appearing weak to people, that you think you're going to look like you're not strong enough, or that you're going to show. The other thing is that if you're, you might be afraid to show your more vulnerable side, because you think, okay, it's going to be the chink in my armor, right? It'll be the opening that someone can use to, get me, stab me. The other thing is that it can be a refusal to compromise. It can be someone who is stubborn as all get out, right? And what I like about the, but yeah, it's definitely someone who refuses to budge, right? Now, The other thing is that it can be just like all wands in reverse can be a little bit of the lacking of courage. It can be refusing to take a stand. Maybe you feel like, okay, this fight is going to be a long bloody one, I don't want to do it, and so you refuse, and then it's almost like you cave or give in before the fight even begins, or either that or even worse. I would kind of, looking at it, I would think that you were this close to victory, and you caved in the end because you felt like it was being drawn out too long, right? That it was taking too long, so you'd rather cave now, even though you were close to being successful. It can be a wishy-washy attitude, or in the opposite, it can be a little bit too stern of an attitude. If you see the Nine of Wands in reverse next to the Emperor, oh, I would be afraid. That is someone who, that would almost be, or if you see it next to like the devil, that would almost be someone who would drag something else out to be vindictive, someone to incite or to be malicious, right? Someone who would want to incite pain by, it's almost like if you saw that next to justice and the devil, it would almost be like, okay, well, I'm going to make this bloody. I'm going to make this drawn out and painful because I'm just that stubborn, and I'm digging in, right? Now, in that sense, it can be hitting below the belt. It can be, again, being just a little bit of a bully. But in the other sense, it can kind of be, and also in kind of the vein of feeling weak, it can be a loss of stature. If it's any type of wand card in reverse, like if it's the, Queen of Wands in reverse next to the Nine of Wands in reverse, it could be a fall from grace, like something that happened that made you look really bad or incompetent, or just kind of almost like a turtle, it threw you on your back where you were helpless. The other thing is that it can also, in that same sense, can be an over paranoia. Just like we said, the persons are looking behind them. And that's what I like about the vice versa, is that when you look at the back, you see the reverse is that you see this really kind of seductive woman reaching out to him, right? And again, this is the guy with one eye, and she's almost kind of like, hey, why don't you come with me? Go ahead and just put that rod down and come my way, right? And he's just like, no, I don't think so. And it's a suspicion, right? It's a suspicion. It's like everything is too good to be true. And that is definitely something with the rods in reverse. And again, the way that we talked about how it means that you could have been hurt in the past and you have your guard up. Sometimes it's an extreme paranoia. It can be someone who's so walled up that they're not letting any good in. And that can be a sign of weakness too. Not in a mean way, but and goodness knows we've all been there. We've all had those experiences where sometimes, when you've been hurt, you put up a really tall wall. And sometimes no one can get in. And honestly, sometimes it doesn't always defend you, because what it is if someone wants to get in, even the bad people, they'll scale a wall, right? But and it isn't to say that you should just let anybody in, but it's also just saying, don't keep the good out with the bad, is kind of what it is. But the nine in reverse would definitely be someone who's extremely paranoid, someone who is terrified of getting hurt again, and therefore they wall up and they hole up, and they don't even bother. They don't fight the fight, right? Because they think it's not worth it. And then the last kind of things is that if you want to think of the nine in reverse as people, it would be kind of the person who gets picked last. I always think of it, the nine in reverse would be someone who gets picked last for dodgeball or for baseball, right? It's the person that you feel like you're not strong enough, or maybe you have some kind of physical condition that's always made you feel like you have no stamina. One last thing is one really great movie that I always compare to that when I think of both the nine of wands in the upright and the reverse, is if you've ever seen the movie Gattaca with Ethan Hawke. And you know, he's a natural born person in a future where everything is genetically modified to be the best. And he has a heart condition, so therefore he can't. They won't even let him have go for his dream of being an astronaut. And you know, they think that his heart is just going to cop out, right? That he's not strong enough, but he proves that he can do it in so many ways. But I always think of that, and that's such a great analogy when you think about, you know, both the Nine of Wands in the upright and the reverse. But all right, guys, so you can see why I love this card. It's a beautiful card. It's something that's really worth, you know, looking at. And it's interesting, again, with it being such kind of a nuanced card. It has so much depth to it. I like seeing it in a reading. You know, the complexity of it just makes it just, you know, it brings so much information, and it personifies so much. We'll go ahead and let you choose your deck. We have 3 decks as usual. The first deck is always going to be the Rider-Waite Smith. It is the A.G. Mueller production, which is a very sharp, the images are very, very detailed and very descript. With it, we have the kind of brownish gold sunstone. Then the second deck is, again, one of my favorites. It is the Slow Tarot by Lacey Bryant, and it's the Nine of Wands. I'm sorry, all of them are the Nine of Wands. With it, you have a beautiful bloodstone. Ooh, I'm sorry. Oh, back. I'm feeling like the Nine of Wands in reverse today. And then the last deck is the Vice Versa Tarot by Lo Scarabeo. I'm sorry. It's a beautiful Italian name. I'm always botching it. And then with it, you have the Dalmatian Jasper, which is, again, one of my favorites. If you need more time, please pause the video. I do ask that you just choose from your gut instinct. Maybe you like the artwork or the stone or the timestamp. And I'll go ahead and let you choose, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back. Go ahead and move these up. We're going to see, how does the Nine of Wands manifest in your life? And again, I'm so curious. I was really looking forward to this read because, again, with everything going on in the world, right? This, again, if I had to choose a card to personify 2020. All right, so deck number 1, the tried and true Rider-Waite Smith. How does the Nine of Wands manifest in your life? Okay, currently, thank you. Oh my gosh, how many cards is that? And the future. Okay. All right. Oh, and one other thing, I failed to mention this before we chose. I am going to do a clarifier with a deck called the Mixed Emotions, and this is a wonderful, it's not even really an oracle deck. What it is that it's a deck that is meant to be for meditation and guidance counseling. They're just basically cards that give emotions, and it lets you just kind of pull cards. It's almost like tarot for psychology, and I love this deck. I've had it for a long time, but I think this is the first time I'm using it on the channel, so I hope you guys enjoy. I'm going to go ahead and we'll pull one card to help describe everything. So, what is your mixed emotions? Nine of Wands. Rider-Waite Smith. What's our 9? What's our emotion? Ooh. Oh, that flipped. Oh my gosh, guys. That is amazing. Okay, see, I love, just heart. Oh, my back. Oh, God. Sorry. Ow. Again. All right. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep it together. It's not you, it's me. Oh, too young to hurt this bad. Okay, so definitely, guys, wow. Oh, I'm getting such a clear picture. Oh, guys. So In the past, what has led up to your Nine of Wands is that you got the Knight of Pentacles. And long story short, you guys were about your coin. You were trying to make it in the world, right? The thing about the Knight of Pentacles is that Pentacles are what you value. And that can be money, that can be principles, it can be property, and usually it means physical things, right? But it can, basically, and the other thing is that knights go on missions, right? But the Knight of Pentacles, you see that his horse has all 4 feet on the ground, right? And unlike his counterparts, the Knight of Wands and the Knight of Swords, they are the fast movers. They are the Speedy Gonzales of the tarot world. The Knight of Pentacles is not that. He's not Speed Racer. He's not trying to get anywhere with his, Mach 5 with his hair on fire. He understands the importance of being slow and steady and putting the cornerstones in place. This does give him a little bit of a stodgy reputation. He takes his sweet time, and I'll be honest, anytime you see him in certain readings, he is slow as molasses in January. He does not move fast at all. But the thing is, just like any knight, he does get where he's going. And what I always giggle is that when you look at his horse, like the front of his horse, it almost looks like it has a sprig. There you go. You see, it looks like he has foliage. It's almost like his horse has been standing still so freaking long that it's sprouting. It's sprouting foliage, right? But what it means is that in the past, all you've ever wanted was a good life, right? All you've ever wanted was a good life. You wanted to put the cornerstones in place. You wanted to have enough money, a roof over your head, the things that you wanted to be surrounded by, the things that you value in life. And you've always been slow and steady about it, but you're not a child, right? You're not a child. It's the other thing about knights is they're a very young adult energy. They definitely, they move, right? They go at their own pace. But you've done that. You went on a mission to accomplish that, to get a stable life with enough money, with things that you value around you. And that's you in the past, right? Now, you in the present, you've got some amazing, crazy energy here, right? Anytime something comes out in a line, I think of it as root, stem, bloom. And it goes right up to your Nine of Wands, right? This is your story. And what you have is at the very root of the story, you have the Devil, and there are no bad cards in tarot, so we're going to get into that. You've got the World, which is one of the best cards in the world. And then you got the Page of Pentacles. Remember how we talked about, the knight is not a child, it's not a page. And then you got above it, you got the Seven of Wands. And we just had a tarot a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. So feel free to check that out if you want. It's in my playlist. But basically where you are now is that, when you started out in your past, you were a knight. You were kind of well on your way, right? You didn't have as much worries. You felt engaged. You were further along than you wanted. You were moving along your path. And what the Nine of Wands, how it's manifesting in your life is that as you went through your life, right, you had a few setbacks, right? You had a few setbacks. And these setbacks are really rooted in the Devil energy. And the Devil is not anything to be terribly feared, but what it is it is addictions, and it is fears, and it's obligations, right? So somewhere along the line, you developed habits, or maybe you got into commitments that really tied you down, right? Because you see, with the Devil, there's chains here, right? Now, the one thing I always notice about this is that when you look at the chains around Adam and Eve, this is kind of the Adam and Eve from the Lovers, the chains are loose, right? It's not like these chains are right up to their neck, right? You could lift the chains off over your head and walk away. But the thing is, you kind of have a comfort zone with the devil. The devil keeps you feeling like you can't walk away. And that can be addictions. That can be addictions with money. It can be financial obligations that you've created with people. It could be addictions to substances, and that's not, it doesn't have to be anything heavy, but it can point to things like, it can be anything. It can be smoking, it can be drinking, it could be to hobbies. I mean, basically anything that you feel like you can't give up. But a lot of this is that I do just feel that you just feel like you've gotten into activities, you've gotten into some kind of world that you've got yourself really heavily entrenched, right? And what it is that underneath, with the devil being underneath the world, and the world is the card of completion. It's like a graduation. It's like it's the last card of the Major Arcana, right? And it is the completion of a cycle. So what I'm seeing currently is that you were well on your path in the past, but you got waylaid by something. You got entangled with some kind of really kind of dark, or just something that really made you feel trapped, something that made you feel obligated, and it made you feel dependent, right? And again, that can be anything. That can be a living situation, that can be, money that you owe to someone, it can be, but anything that inhibits your freedom and you feel like you can't walk away, right? And I do get a positive sense with the world being over the devil. I do think that you might have conquered this, or at least you've gotten a grip on it where you can see a way out. But the problem is that it's not even really a problem. It's just, it's going to knock you back a peg, because you see, you're going from a knight to a page, right? And I do almost think that this might be money related, because it's almost like you have to pay off your debts, right? You have to pay off your debts. The other thing that I'm kind of noticing here is that with the pentacle, you have the star in the upright, right? You have the star, and over the devil, you have the star in the reverse, which I know is always a really scary symbol. But here, I'm not seeing it as the typical, I'm not seeing it as anything scary. I'm seeing it as almost a reverse of money. Like, it's almost like that pentacle upside down, right? So I do think that maybe you got yourself into some kind of financial or some kind of social obligation that you couldn't easily get out of. And you've recently found a way out. The other thing about the world is that the four corners are the fixed signs. You've got Aquarius, you got Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo, and the fixed signs are the doers. They get stuff done. It's the completion, right? And I do think that you were victorious. I think you were victorious, but I do think that it cost you a little bit. It was hard. It made you, again, it knocked you down a few pegs. Now, the other thing is that when you see it going into the page, it almost means that you kind of got bumped down to kindergarten, and not in a weird way. It's almost like you have to revisit your understanding of how to make money, or it's almost like you're starting afresh, right? It is kind of like being busted down to corporal. But it's a good thing, because even if you're starting from scratch, the page is not the Five of Pentacles, right? You're not destitute, but you are back at ground zero, right? So you can build again, but you're not as far along as you were in the past, right? You had to pay off whatever debts, you had to get away from your obligations, and you were successful. But what I'm seeing here is that above the page, you got the Seven of Wands. So I almost feel like I'm almost getting like a entry-level job kind of feeling. It's almost like, again, before you were kind of ahead of the game. You haven't been through the war here yet, right? In the past, you had a good buffer of money. You didn't, the money was all yours. You were still sitting on top of the horse, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, okay, well, I had to pay off what I had to pay off, and now I'm not as wealthy as I used to be. I had to sell my horse. But now it's almost like you have to kind of fight. You have to hold your ground in order to get back where you were before, right? Because again, this almost looks like the same guy. It really does, right? And again, I'm getting that sense like, you had to get down off your horse, you had to start afresh, and now it's almost like other people are vying, or, again, you might have to compete a little bit, you might have to hold your ground. But again, the way that the Nine of Wands is manifesting in your life is that you may have to hold your ground, but you're gonna do it. Remember how we said the 9 means that you will do that. It shall be done. You don't give up, right? You were there before, you started afresh, you defended your hill, and when it's all over, your clothes are not going to be clean, and you're not going to be as fresh and shiny as you were when you were sitting on your horse in the past, but you're going to hold it firm until the very end. And actually, that's a very good energy when you're trying to get out of energies like the devil, because the devil unfortunately does make you feel like you're crawling out, and it's a humbling experience. It's a humbling experience, but it's a very sobering one though, because when you get out, when you finally get out, you're like, I'm never going through that again, right? But the energy is saying you can do it, right? You can do it. It's going to be a fight, and you might be a little bruised, but you're going to be okay. Now, what I kind of love about this is that as you go forward, you got the Four of Cups. And what I'm kind of seeing here is that I see going forward, you're going to be okay, because you see your clothes get clean again, right? You're going to go back to wearing normal clothes. So I'm seeing this as a story. It's almost like you had all this great armor, and after all this is said and done, after you've crawled away from the devil and fought to your very end, it's almost like you're going to be very cautious. And again, that Nine of Wands, we talked about being cautious. You're not going to be, I'm almost getting a feeling like you're not going to be a fool again. And it wasn't that you were foolish to begin with, but I just do think that you're afraid. It's almost like any opportunity that comes your way, you might have gotten in over your head, and you dodged a bullet, and it's almost like, again, that caution, that wariness, like, I'm not even going to look at that cup. And I almost do get kind of, there's not a whole lot of emotion cards up until it's almost, the only other vibe that I'm getting is that I am getting a kind of a sense that you really did pull yourself out of a bad situation, and you're afraid of ever going back. But the one fear is that, remember how we talked about sometimes you put walls up and it keeps the good out with the bad? There might legitimately be some opportunities that come your way, but you're ignoring it. You're looking at what's already occurred, and you're like, okay, this can't be any good, right? I'm not going to fall for it, right? I'm not going to fall for it. What you doing? What's coming at me, right? So you are a little bruised. Now, the other thing that you got is your emotion card. You got ashamed, and it says unworthy, disgraced, and humiliated. So the other thing that I'm getting from this is that part of this situation, part of this fighting and crawling out of the bad situation, there might have been actions that you were not proud of. Either that, or you consider yourself to be a good, someone who is worthy of praise, and somewhere in all of this, either your reputation got kind of sullied, or somehow you might have ended up having to do things that you were not proud of. And this might not necessarily be as bad as that you think it is, but it's, again, you almost feel like, I don't want to go back to this ever again, and you feel like it's kind of cast some kind of shadow on you. But again, these are feelings. It doesn't necessarily have to be as bad as that you're perceiving it. But I do think that you do have kind of your guard up, and it's kind of making you a little bit numb. The other thing I would caution against is that this night really does seem, all nights are really kind of enthusiastic about their future, right? They get, what's the sense of living if you're not excited about it, right? But definitely when you've had some hard knocks, when you've had that school of hard knocks, it does make you wary sometimes. But you don't, the purpose of life is never to be, it's not meant to make you feel numb, right? There are still experiences in life that you can feel excited about. The other thing about shame is that, I know it's so trite of me to say, but it's nothing that you can change, right? If something occurred in the past, it's already happened. And but what you can do is, there might be some psychological ways that you can really kind of accept it and kind of come to terms with it. Because the only thing is that you would not want any past shame to be hindering your future, right? You don't want anything in the past to make you feel like you can't accept something exciting, in the future. But I definitely think that you have the best judgment, because the other thing about the Nine of Wands is that this guy knows, right? He's no dummy. He's been through it, he's already been through it, and those experiences count for something. So, but I would just say that again, don't let any paranoia make you not take action. And if you are feeling any dark emotions like shame or humiliation, do what you can to try to face that. The other thing that I always think of when I think of shame or humiliation, I always like to think of how how many people are really gonna remember that, right? Like, I read a great article in Psychology that said one time, this mom, one of her daughters had gotten into some kind of conflict. It was one of those petty, teenager, tiffs, and somebody got into like some kind of fight with someone else, and they both, her daughter and another girl, drove the same type of car, and they lived on the same street. And someone came by, and they got the person that got into the fight confused the mother's car for the other girl, right? They the same car, same street, and the person keyed the car and carved into the side of the car, "You're a slut." And so the mother, who is completely innocent, the daughter, who's completely innocent because they got the wrong car, it was the same make, model, color, same street, they had this car. So she's like, well, what am I supposed to do? We have one car, it's our only car. So she's driving around with "You're a slut" carved into her car, right? And of course people are staring at her. People are saying, well, what happened to you? What kind of Jerry Springer drama did you get into? And it is kind of like that. But it's one of those things where you try to laugh at it in the long run. Whether it really was you who did something, whether you didn't do something, if you own it, after enough time, if you stand up and handle it, after enough time, it will go away. It won't fade completely, but if you have come to terms with it within yourself, most people won't remember it, most people won't remember it. It'll fade. It'll be like a blip thing in the social fabric of our lives. It won't last long. And then all it really boils down to is, are you all right? Right? Because it doesn't matter about what anybody else thinks. It matters what you think. But all right, guys, I know I got a little long-winded, but wow, that was a powerful read. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put your cards on top. And just for the record, the How to Tarots do run a little bit longer because, they do. All right, deck number 2, the Slow Tarot by Lacey, Bryant. And with your bloodstone, which is a really beautiful brown-green stone, let's go ahead and see, how does the Nine of Wands manifest in your life? Ooh. Okay. And the future, please. Oh, beautiful, guys. All right, we got quite a bit of energy here. All of the decks, we got quite a bit of energy. Let's go ahead and see. Nine of Wands. All right. Wow. Definitely. I'm kind of seeing I'm seeing a story here. Okay, so in the past we got the Ace of Pentacles and the Seven of Wands, and again, we Seven of Wands not too long ago. The other deck got the same one. And the two cards are crowned by the Ten of Swords. And honestly, this is a little bit more of a gruesome Ten of Swords out of all the decks. But I always say that the root of the situation was this, and the crown of it, or the result, came out here. So I definitely see that in the past there was a reason why you are the Nine of Wands. You had the one thing that I talked about when we How to Tarot, because I did use this Seven of Wands in the How to Tarot for the Seven of Wands, is I talked about how young the person looked, right? And how it looked like he's on an obstacle course. I think that in the past, the one thing that I noticed about this is that it really seems like this person is a young person, right? And they really look like they're on some kind of obstacle course at such a young age. It's like, why in the world is anybody, it's like the Hunger Games or something. It's like, okay, why is someone that young, being forced to do this agile, running up a ladder kind of exercise? And next to it, you got the Ace of Pentacles, which is really that cornerstone. The Ace of Pentacles is what you value in life. It's the cornerstones of what you want to establish. So I think in this pile that you really do have, unfortunately, I think you have the PhD from the School of Hard Knocks. I think that you had to grow up very quickly. I think you had to be very responsible. I think you were exposed to things, I think you were exposed to adult responsibilities or adult expectations at a very young age. And I think it left you really stabbed in the back a lot. I think it just made you feel like, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you try to stay ahead and to get that stability, right? To lay those cornerstones. Also, I do get the feeling as if maybe someone may have taken advantage of you financially, or you put so much work into something and it just never got off the ground because of other people's pettiness, right? Sometimes that can be a situation where maybe you did have to take care of a family member, but here I definitely just feel like you were very young and you were trying to do the right thing and get the right start in life, but no matter how hard you worked or how agile you were, you still got stabbed, right? You still had situations that really took you out, right? That you really knocked you down completely. So it did make you feel I just feel like in this pile, and I'm so sorry, I'm really feeling it in the center of my chest, and my heart is breaking a little bit here. I think that you had all of the best intentions and you worked really damn hard from a young age to do things the right way. And then I do feel like you had some merciless moments. The other thing about bloodstones is that they purge negative energy, right? So it's possible, ooh, as I drop it, it's possible that you might have had some negative energy around you that, as much as you tried to keep things on the level, the moment that you got a little bit ahead, you would get knocked down really kind of cruelly. But that was in the past, and I think what it is that, and again, you see how she's looking back at this. You've never forgotten it, right? You've never forgotten it. And it was survival. It was survival. It was like, okay, to not get knocked flat on your face, you had to be very agile, and and it was almost unfair to you. That's what I'm feeling, is that it was unfair. It's like you didn't have the advantage when you were young. But one thing that I see is that as you grew up, these experiences were never forgotten. You had some really sad moments, and I do think that there were probably moments where people were really, you know, um, that that I feel like a couple people might have capitalized or might have benefited from your hard work. Now, in the current energy, you have the star card and the moon, and again, as you grew up, the star is actually a really beautiful card. You see someone who's on a boat and she's looking at a sextant, and the seagull always means that there's land nearby, right? And she's charting her course. She's charting her course, and she's wearing a white dress, like a bride, like purity. And then you see a lot of the same colors in the moon, right? And you have the two dogs, the wolf and the domesticated dog, right? And we had a tarot in both of these cards if you ever get a chance, if you want to watch particularly the moon. But I just think that all of the past experiences really affected your psyche. I think that you know how to be hopeful. I don't think that any of these experiences have ever killed your hope. I think your hope has, I think that, what I'm feeling is I'm feeling like that hope is that little spark inside of you that never goes away. But I am hearing this little light of mine, don't hide it under a bush. Don't squelch it. It sometimes gets really dim when you've been stabbed or when someone's taken advantage of you. Sometimes that light gets really dim, but you never let it go out. You don't let it go out. And the moon, I just get the feeling like for that little spark of hope, you've had moments where you felt really lost. That's the other thing. You've followed your compass, but you've definitely had moments where that candle was almost about to go out and you were afraid, right? You felt really lost, and you felt like you were. The other thing is there's a lot of churning sea in this, right? There's a lot of churning emotion. You see that sea, and you see the churning waves there. I think this is really underneath the surface. It's really affected you. It's affected you, but you don't let it show. The other thing is that from all of this emotion, you've really balanced yourself, because you got the Queen of Wands. You got the Queen. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the Queen of Coins. This is the Queen of Coins. And wow, guys, what a beautiful thing. You went from the Ace of Coins to the Queen of Coins. And you know what that means? Gosh, guys, this is a beautiful pile. Can I just tell you right now that I just respect the hell out of you just looking at these cards? And I'm sorry, I know I'm getting animated, but you went from having nothing and people probably capitalizing off that, like, you've had a few falls, and you took the spark and you navigated the dark. Like, there have been times where you really went through a dark night of the soul, and you came out a prosperous person. This woman, the Queen of Coins, the Queen of Pentacles, she has abundance. She knows the value of life. And the other thing is that she still gives to other people, right? Like, you take care of others, even though you probably weren't taken care of when you were young. You take care of others. You know the value of money, and it's almost like those little things that you do for people. You always make sure that everybody has what they need, right? person that when you run out of toilet paper, you bring over toilet paper, right? You're the friend who's like, oh, I heard you just had a baby. Let me bring over food so you can eat for the week. You're that kind of person that thinks about those details, even though you might not have had the same kindness given to you when you were growing up. And underneath the surface, you've had a lot of chaos. Like there's been moments when in your life where you felt truly lost. But and the other thing that you see is that, doesn't it look like, this is why I thought it was the Queen of Wands, because it looks like it's coming from the moon to the sun, but that's just the coin around her head. It looks like a sun. But I do feel like you haven't let any of these bad experiences make you a bad person. I just think that you do care for people and you are giving to others. I also think that you have established, even though you've had some setbacks, you have established a good financial and secure present for yourself. But you're always on guard though. You do watch. You watch out for that. You're practical. That's the other thing I'm getting from this. You're no fool. Like you're grateful for what you have. You take care of others. You take care of your own. You definitely have been through a few dark nights of the soul, and you've kept your humanity from it. But the other thing is that the other thing that I get is that you can spot manipulation a mile off. Like you can really tell if something, you can tell where things are going, right? Now, towards the future of this, and again, right now, the future that you got the Seven of Cups in reverse. And the Seven of Cups is that many choices kind of card, right? And when it's in the reverse, it means that it kind of means one of two things. And the way I'm reading it is, sometimes the Seven of Cups in reverse can mean that you feel really lost. You feel like you don't know where to go. But the opposite of it is that it can mean that you're coming out of that energy. Like you're no longer going to be overwhelmed by all of your options. And underneath it, you got another seven. So you got Seven of Cups reversed, and you got Seven of Swords. And the Seven of Swords is traditionally known as kind of, it is in tarot, it is kind of meant as the thief card, but not in a bad way. It just basically means that you know what you want to do, but what you want to do might not be readily accepted by others. And it's almost like you have to take your ideas and you have to do what you got to do, right? It is a little bit of you're trying to make it a soft blow. You're not trying to do anything clandestinely, but it's almost like you have to. So here, I really get this feeling like, and this being in the future, I think that you might be present in a situation that's kind of making you feel like the past. You feel like, there's a potential that you might be taken advantage of, and you can't allow that to happen. So you're not going to waver. You're not going to get confused by the choices ahead of you. You're going to choose one thing. You're going to choose your course of action. And if it requires that you do what you got to do for yourself, you'll do it, right? Because I almost get the feeling like with the 10 going into the 7, it's almost like in the past, the way that you got stabbed is by trying to take care of others. And it isn't to try to sound selfish or anything like that, because you're a giving person. You're a very giving person. But it's almost like overextending yourself too, right? It's again, you won't be duped. You're not going to be duped, and you're not going to be taken advantage of. And you're sure as heck not going to have another 10 swords put into your back, right? So, but what I'm seeing is also to the right of it is you got the Ace of Cups. So you're going from the Seven of Cups in reverse to the Ace of Cups. So what that tells me is that you're not you're not getting bogged down with a bunch of where do I go next? Like the moon is a lot of where do I go next? You're not having that anymore. You're the Queen of Pentacles. You know where you're going to go next. You're going to go towards what makes you happy. You're going to do what you're going to do you, right? And you're not going to try to dupe anyone. Like you're not going to try to sneak away in the night, but you are going to do what's right by you. Because I almost get the feeling like, again, it's the stance. Wow, I love How to Tarot's because it's your stance. It's your, I have been through the war. I know I know where I've been, and where I'm going seems to be leading me kind of in a similar place, and I'm not going through that again. So to avoid going through that again, I'm going to be very clear about what I need to do. And there are times when you have to. The other thing that I love about the Ace of Cups in this card is that there is a dragonfly. There's a dragonfly there, and the dragonfly is transformation. It's rising above illusion. That's the other thing, rising above illusion. And the Seven of Swords is almost telling me that you know what you got to do, right? You're going to feel like you're being sneaky. I almost feel like you feel like you're being sneaky. But to be honest, these are thoughts and emotions, and you're trying not to be clouded by your emotions. You're trying to be clear about your thoughts, and you definitely want it to be an Ace of Cups. You need it to be what's right for you, right? And clarifying all of this is you got irritated. You got irritated, annoyed, aggravated, bothered, right? So, this could be a life situation. I'm not so much getting a relationship vibe. There's a lot of cups here, but there's a lot of pentacles. What I'm kind of getting is just there might be a situation that you were emotionally invested in. And, that can be a relationship, but most of the time it can be a job. It can be a family situation. But basically you're a giving person, and you've already hashed out the turmoil, right? Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, got the bobble doll, you know what that entails. And you're not going to let it, extinguish your light. And as much as you want to do for others, you can't let it be at the expense of yourself. But you are irritated, and I almost, I've been seeing the Seven of Swords in a lot more of the, that little inner voice, like, should I be doing this? This isn't what I want to be doing. What I want to be doing is this, right? So, but what it is telling you is that you don't want to be that sneak in the night. If you are having thoughts about where you want to go, here I almost think that you're guarding these thoughts too. It's almost like you don't want to come out and tell people your plan, but you don't want to, you would never want to screw over anybody else the way that you were in the past, right? You wouldn't want to blindside somebody, but you do also have to do what's right for you. So I do think that whatever is irritating in this situation, if it keeps irritating you, you're going to do what you got to do. I do think that you will come out. I'm not getting the only other thing is that I am getting a little bit of not passiveness, but I'm getting the sense that you're not going to, you're thinking about taking action. You're clandestinely thinking about what you have to do, and it's in a survivalist kind of mindset. So I don't think you're showing anybody your plan. But I do think that the reason that you're having these thoughts, the reason that you're putting number one first, and the reason you're looking over your shoulder like, okay, do I have to gather up my swords and, get the heck out of Dodge, is because something is irritating the crap out of you, right? There's something that's wearing you down. The other thing is we talked about how it's wearing you down, right? You're worn out. You don't have much more to give to any crap, right? But I do see with the Ace of Cups, that's a very beautiful future. And I think I do think that you're not being murky. You're very clear about where you want to go. But I would say, keep it on the level. When you're ready to come out and say something, if we have to put it in kind of a military context, have you ever heard of the term throw a warning over the bow, right? Like shoot a warning shot. There we go. And anytime you're dealing with Seven of Swords energy, that might be good. Just say, look, okay, if someone's really annoying you to the point that you want to like pick up your swords and go the way the Seven of Swords would, and put number one first, shoot a warning shot. Say, look, kind of very discreetly, a hint at your irritation and give the person or the situation the opportunity to make it better. And then by all means, if they don't, don't go the course of the 10, do what you got to do to take care of you. But I do think that that would keep you on the level, because the Seven of Swords is a little bit of an imbalanced energy, and it is a little bit. It is the sneak in the night card, but you're doing it for all the right reasons, and definitely you don't deserve any crap. Don't let anybody give you any crap. But all right, guys, so that's your read, and wow, that is really powerful. Okay, last deck, the Vice Versa by Lo Scarabeo. I keep dropping my poor bloodstone. How can it heal anything if I keep beating it up, right? Okay, so last card, you got the Vice Versa Tarot, and here I'll go ahead and show you the back. That back is one of my favorites, I swear to you, just the expression. You get so much out of it seeing both sides of the card. Alright, so deck number 3, how does the Four of Wands really wants to come out? How does the Nine of Wands manifest in your life? Okay, the Justice card keeps wanting to flip. Let's try one last time. Definitely. Anytime it's meant to come out, it will. I'm going to go ahead and shuffle a little bit. Okay. Go ahead and take it. And ooh. Oh my gosh. I think I might have a common denominator card here, guys. The Seven of Wands has popped out in every single deck. I'm gonna mention it. Oh my goodness. Okay, please clarify the Seven of Wands. We're getting a Knight of Pentacles, and the Ace of Cups really wanted to come out too. But let's just go ahead and we'll get your mixed emotion cards. Ooh, Knight of Pentacles on the top. All right, we're going to go ahead and take him. He really wants to flip our way. So, oh my gosh, guys, angry. Wow, we got lightning in 2 of these cards. Holy Toledo. You see this? Lightning outside and lightning there. Wow. All right. So let's go ahead and let's get into it. Now, in the past we got death. And there's no bad cards in tarot. We've had a tarot on death. It's a very powerful card. But basically death means transformation, right? It definitely means that there was the end to one way of living and the start of another. So it's pretty straightforward. You've probably really gone through some really heavy energies in your life. It's possible that you really had a loss in the past. It could be the loss of a person. It can be loss of a lifestyle. It could be a loss of a living situation or a job. But in the past, there was a lot of changes that occurred that made you change at a core level. Like, it's a very phoenix kind of energy. Now, presently, underneath the Nine of Wands, you got the King of Cups, and it's underneath the devil. Now, again, there are no bad cards in tarot. Actually, the devil is kind of shown up in another deck too. But you see how Adam and Eve is kind of chained to the post of this really kind of scary looking, figure. And the sense that I'm getting is that in the past, again, I'm getting a lot of sense with the Nine of Wands being that school of hard knocks kind of feeling. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I mentioned in the beginning my back. Let me kind of move a little bit. Ooh, ow. Okay, lumbar pillow. Okay, I do think that this armor, the tattered, I think you have gone to war. I think you've experienced a lot of loss. I think you've lost your eye, you've had the holy heck beat out of you. I think that you've really just been through the war. I think you are a survivor. I think you're a soldier. And what I'm seeing is that in the past, I think you might have had to grow up really fast. I do think that you might have lost kind of support systems prematurely. I think that you've had to learn from a very young age, again, school of hard knocks. And I think it's because of, a lot of things. I think I'm really getting a sense like the way that you grew up was not the easiest. And I think I'm getting a strong sense of things falling away. And I'm sorry, it's like it just seems like all of the pillars that are supposed to support you when you're young, they just kept, one thing, maybe the loss of one thing and then the loss of another thing. And it was just, I'm getting this sense like one after the other. And it was just this kind of gradient of change. And it was all rooted in things being I really feel like you feel like things were taken from you. Right? And the present where you are now, so in the past it might have just felt like stark loss that you grieved, and it kind of metamorphosized into, because what I'm seeing is with the root of it being the King of Cups. The King of Cups is a sweet and kind person. This is a man who is comfortable with his own emotions. He's a good father. He's a good husband. He's a gentle soul. But he has all of the maturity of a king. He's not weak. He is not weak. He knows his own heart. And he's very open. You see how he holds that cup up? He's open with his heart to others. And what I love about this card is you look at his feet. It's almost like the water bows to him, right? And water is emotion. Water is very, very deep. And so you could very well have Scorpio, Pisces, or Cancer in your chart, like the Cancer sun sign. But you rule your emotions. The other thing that I'm getting is you rule your emotions. You have kind of a tight fist on, you don't show that sensitive side to yourself very easily. But I do get a sense that this loss, it might have left you a little bit undefended growing up. And so I do think that you might have been exposed to a little bit, you were exposed to kind of seedy behaviors, and not in a bad way, but that kind of happens. That happens when you don't have a lot around you to guide you, right? If maybe maybe you didn't, and it might not even be necessarily that the parent, it doesn't necessarily have to be that a parent passed away, but maybe the parent was very absent and just not there. They were present but not there, and I'm so sorry, because sometimes that can be almost a worse kind of pain, for someone to be in your life but then not, not take on the role of the caretaker, or not teach you or be there for you, right? So I do get the sense that it's almost like you had to create your own. You became your own king, right? You taught yourself. But the problem is that the root of it is that the funny thing is, I think the root of it, and you can be a woman watching this, um, it actually, if you are a woman, it just kind of means that you had, I always think of it, when I see a king in a woman's reading, I always think that you had to be your own man, right? You had to be your own father figure, which is even harder. But man or woman, I think inside you have a very giving, and you have a soul that wants to be open. You have a soul that wants to be giving. But I think that you've really had to adhere to kind of a tougher lifestyle, and maybe you had to come across, like, in order to not seem weak. That's the other thing, because we talked about the 9 about being, perseverance, being the the hard ass, right? You're the hard ass, right? Maybe you had to, maybe underneath it all, in the core of you, you are a sweet, sensitive person, but you could never show that because you had to keep your defenses up. Because you were in an environment, or the other thing is that you could very well have obligations. You could have fallen into things, habits or addictions, that really push down this kind of more gentler nature in you. You do see this with, men who did not have a very strong father figure, and maybe had to grow up, and they had to be tough, right? You had to be tough. If you got, if you acted soft, you got your butt beat, basically, right? And same thing with women too. If you don't, the world was a hard place. If you don't toughen up and deal with it, you'll get run over, right? But I do think that this is almost become like covering up, because the devil is over the king. I think covering up your true nature has cost you, right? It's cost you. It's almost like you're trapped in this. You see how these two people have masks on? You see how they have masks? Focus, please. They have masks on. It's like you're not being your true self. You're not being your true self. The other thing is that the devil rules a lot of fear. I think that you have to keep that tough guy persona, even though you're a freaking king, right? You're a king. You keep that tough guy persona on, because if you show your soft side, you feel like it is. The other thing we didn't talk about so much is that it does look like a crutch, right? It looks like the person's leaning on it like a crutch. you know you might be leaning on that persona as a crutch, but the crazy thing is, kings are the top. You're the strongest, right? You're the head of your suit. You don't need anything. You don't need to hide that. You could take the mask off, but I think you're afraid to. I think you're afraid to let that side show, because you don't want to seem weak. You don't want to come across as soft. Now, moving into the future, you got the Seven of Wands. And actually, I used this card when we had a tarot on the Seven of Wands. And what it means is that you're going to defend. Moving forward, you're gonna. I don't see you showing your. I don't see you showing your cup very easily. I think you're gonna stay. You're gonna stay in that mask. What you're gonna do is you're gonna defend your hill, right? You've conquered all of these other rods, right? And you see that with the 9. It's almost like you're gonna continue to conquer. You're not gonna give up your position. But underneath it, you got the King of Pentacles, but you got him in reverse. And underneath it, you got the Knight of Pentacles. And again, the Knight of Pentacles came up in the first deck. We have a lot of free occurring energy here, guys. But what I'm seeing is, again, in your present, I see you chaining up your inner King of Cups. I see you holding that down because you don't want to show it. You think if you show it, you're going to be marked as being weak. And what you're doing is you want to be the King of Pentacles. You're already the King of Cups. You already own your emotions, but you want to be the King of Pentacles. You want to be secure. It's almost like I'm getting a strong sense, and this also plays into the Devil. You want money. You want security. And you will fight whatever battle that you need to. And right now, I think you are staying ahead of the pack. But the pack, the other thing about the 7 is that you're marginally ahead, right? You're not head and shoulders above the crowd, but you're ahead for right now. But the thing about the King of Wands in reverse is that it is a little bit, and I'll come out and say it, it's a little bit of a materialistic card. It's a little bit superficial. It's someone who wants to be, you want to be king of the hill in a material sense. I almost get the sense like you want control on a physical plane. You want to be so secure. You want the mansion, you want the fancy car in the driveway, and you'll stop at nothing to get that. And right now it's a little bit of a competition, but you are beating out the competition. But the other thing is I do get the feeling like you're keeping the water is so controlled. I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting a strong Scorpio vibe. And Scorpio and Taurus are kind of opposite on the spectrum, but you want the money, you want stability, and you're not quite there yet. And the other thing is you're going from a King of Cups energy into a Knight of Pentacles, and the Knight of Pentacles is coming out right next to, he's below the reversed King. And it's funny, not too long ago we had another reading. It was a couple weeks ago. And I think it was my Southwest Sacred Tribes reading that the knight was bringing the pentacle to the king. Now, I can read it two ways. It could be potentially that you might owe money. You might owe money to someone who's kind of a patriarchal figure. You might owe something, and it might not even be money. It might be, you might owe some kind of security to someone. And so you're going real slow. It's coming slowly, but you're going to pay it back, but you're staying ahead of it. I almost get a feeling you're staying ahead of your bills, but just maybe by a week or so. Like, if one paycheck gets thrown off, we're screwed, right? But that has to be your priority. So that could be it. It could be that you owe someone. And again, gender is not relevant. You could be a woman in this energy, but you're slowly but steady paying off what you need to pay off, and you're staying ahead of the pack, but just by a hair, by a nose, right? The other thing is that I feel like maybe it could be you. You're in the Knight energy right now, but you really want to be that king, but you're not quite the king yet. And the king, when it's in the reverse, it is someone who's priding. It is a little bit of, I'll caution you, it's a materialistic energy. It's definitely wanting the security for the security's sake. And your emotion cards really, wow, let's go ahead and talk about this. Remember how I talked about lightning? You got angry, and then you got safe. And for one instance, I just want to show is that there is fire in the death card. There's fire coming out of the horse's eyes. There's fire coming out of the devil's antlers. And then the other thing is that there are some antlers in the Knight of Wands. I'm sorry, Knight of Pentacles. But I do think that the other thing is that this guy, your nine of Wands is not the happiest looking dude, right? And you did get angry. And the other thing is that the angry, it almost looks like the lightning that's in the angry is outside the window. You know what? If I had to call it, and again, with Scorpio and Taurus energy, those are two signs that are all about security. They're about emotional security, they're about financial security. They don't play. And Scorpios are very, very good about pushing they could be pissed as heck at you, and you look at them and you wouldn't see it, right? It would be like this face, like, okay, I want to strangle you, but, and you could not tell, right? And look at this guy, almost looks like the same guy, the same knight in the same, but so I do think that there is something going on. I do think that there's some kind of, if I had to call it, I do think that there's some kind of obligation that you have here. It's almost like you really want a different kind of life. You really want kind of just like an emotionally secure, happy, open life. But for some reason, you have something that you're obligated to. You're staying ahead of the obligation, but it infuriates you. It's like you're angry at the injustice of it, right? It's like, why do I have to always bust, pardon my French, but bust my ass to get just to feel safe, right? And I do think that in order to feel safe, I think that you will shelf, right now it is perseverance, it is being a survivor. I think you'll shelf anything right now that is not going to bring you security. If it's not bringing you security, either emotionally or financially, you're not going to do it. And I do think there's something about the situation that just feels really, that makes you enraged. It just doesn't, you feel like you're toiling away to get something, and the other thing is that the Knight of Pentacles is very slow moving. It's not occurring overnight. But that's the one thing about financial security, though, is that it does take time. It takes time. It's like your stock portfolio. You start small and it builds and it builds, and then one day you have a retirement, hopefully. But right now, it is concerning me that the other thing is that the 7 is above this King in reverse. So I do think that you're just barely staying above some kind of situation, but it is making you angry. The other thing that I think that you're doing is that you are still angry, but you're keeping that anger outside, like you're staying in your bubble, right? You're not going to let the anger get in and get to you, right? You're not going to let it get to you. The other thing is when you look at this reverse, something's tempting you and you're just like, oh, hell no, right? Like, I'm not going for that. But I do think that this is definitely not a bad energy. The other thing is that I do see that you'll be victorious. I think you're fighting the good fight. That's the other thing, is that if you get a chance to watch the 7 of Wands, How to Tarot, you're fighting the good fight. I do think that it's going to be slow going, because the other thing that we talked about is that the thing about the 9 of Wands is that you will be victorious, but it's going to be a slow battle. It's not going to be a fast win. And you might have some really kind of volatile feelings about it. But if this is your security and you're fighting for it, I do think that you'll get there. Just, you might have some bruises in the end, but you'll get through to the other side if you keep fighting. All right, guys. Wow, that was I knew, the wands are always a powerful read, but good gravy. But I hope that this resonates. If it does, please let me know. I really would love your feedback. If you're new to my channel, please, I would be very honored if you would like, comment, or subscribe. Happy Superhero Day. If you get a chance to check out my other video, it is a pick pile. There's 6 piles, and you can find out what is your superpower. Otherwise, I hope you can join me. I do also do a weekly energy card reading. That is posted every Saturday. If you get a chance, I hope that you can stop back by then, and I'll catch you later. Bye.